My fellow Nigerians, as your future president, today I want to speak about the upcoming 2025 presidential elections in our eastern neighbor, the Republic of Cameroon. Why? Because an important component of my foreign policy will be proactive engagement with our neighbors, particularly those of strategic importance like Cameroon. Now, why is Cameroon of strategic importance to us? For starters, our longest land border, stretching almost 2,000 kilometers, is with Cameroon, making that country a significant security and trade partner to us. Indeed, and given our shared northern border, we cannot effectively deal with Boko Haram and ISWAP terrorism without active cooperation with Cameroon. In addition, Cross River State hosts thousands of refugees and asylum seekers fleeing the conflict in English-speaking Cameroon. Benue State also hosts at least a couple hundred others. In other words, the peace and stability of Cameroon are also in our national interest. Again, before you say I'm interfering in the internal affairs of another country, please note that today's remarks on Cameroon are in the context of the African Peer Review Mechanism, an African Union initiative through which member states assess or comment on each other's governance and development progress. Also, while I'll be president in the future, at the moment I'm still a private citizen who is free to share his thoughts on regional or international issues of relevance. With that, I absolutely urge Cameroonians to vote Paul Biya out of office in Sunday's election, not just for their own good, but also for the good of Africa. It's not news, for example, that memes of 92-year-old Paul Biya are used to mock Africans in many parts of the world. So if Cameroonians need one extra reason to vote Biya out, they should do it for the continent. On a more serious note, any Cameroonian supporting and campaigning for Biya, who turned 93 in February and who has been president since 1982, long before so many of us were born, for another 7-year term in office, is either part of the problem in that beautiful country with great potential or needs to have their head or heart examined. By the way, I've spoken up against Biya for many years. Back in 2008, I was one of only 2 students invited to speak at an event co-organized by the United States Embassy in Cameroon at the University of Biya in Cameroon. The theme was Obama and McCain, who wins and how does it affect Africa? At that event, in the presence of the media, including state-owned media, U.S. Embassy officials, the University of Biya Vice Chancellor, and other top University of Biya officials, including the then Registrar, Professor Victor Julius Ngo, who doubled as the Secretary General of Biya's CPDM party for the Fako division, akin to our senatorial zones in Nigeria. I said, and I quote, Obama's emergence as the Democrat presidential candidate has demonstrated that in the U.S. system, anyone can rise to such heights and even become president as long as they have a compelling message that resonates with the people. End of quote. I then added, and I quote, sadly, that's not the case in a country like Cameroon, where a crook like Biya has made himself the natural presidential candidate of a party, the CPDM, that he didn't even create. End of quote. And yes, back in 1985, Biya simply renamed the then ruling CNU party, which he had inherited from his predecessor, former President Amadou Ahidjo, in 1982. Indeed, as I also pointed out, back in 1992, Cameroon had a 5-year presidential term of office. Biya changed it in 1997 with a 2-term clause. But in 2008, a few years to the end of his second 7-year term in 2011, he again changed the constitution and removed term limits. So yes, Biya just wants to stay in power. Now, many Cameroonians, and indeed many Africans, have rightly criticized the Cameroonian opposition for failing to form a coalition to increase the likelihood of defeat for Biya's CPDM party, sort of like what happened in Senegal in 2012 that led to the defeat of Abdoulaye Wade, or in Nigeria in 2015, which resulted in the defeat of Goodluck Jonathan. But does that justify supporting a 92-year-old Biya who has been president for 43 years, who spends so much time abroad and seldom travels within his own country? Now, talking about his age, apart from being the oldest world leader, many of Biya's top officials are either octogenarians, meaning people between 80 and 89, or nonagenarians, those between 90 and 99, like himself. Cameroon's Senate President Marcel Nyat Njifenji, for example, is 90 years old. Cavalier Yegedribil, the National Assembly president in office since 1992, is 85 years old. The Constitutional Council president, Clement Atangana, is 84. The police chief, Martin Bagaguele, is 93 years old. Imagine that. That's what we call a gerontocracy, a government, a system governed by old men. Now, by the way, forget about the Cameroonian opposition for a moment. It's just such a shame that the CPDM itself couldn't field another candidate precisely because Biya has so entrenched himself in power that his CPDM party has built a personality cult around him. Now, unless some popular opposition candidate, someone like Issa Chiroma, wins this year's election, it is highly possible that Cameroon may have to contend with some kind of political instability when nature eventually runs its course. Why? Because unlike with other sit-tight African leaders such as Nassim Bey Yadema of Togo, Gabon's Omar Bongo, and even Laurent Desire Kabila of the Democratic Republic of Congo, with Biya, there clearly hasn't been a succession plan. Therefore, I urge our Cameroonian brothers and sisters to vote Paul Biya out of office this 2025. Yes, 76-year-old Issa Chiroma isn't without flaws. Indeed, he was once a Biya loyalist and only resigned from the Biya cabinet in June after serving as Employment and Vocational Training Minister since 2019, Communication Minister between 2009 and 2019, and Transport Minister from 1992 to 1996. But yes, going by online and offline reactions to his campaign, he is by far the only candidate with any chance of defeating Biya. In fact, just yesterday, I read a very well-written article on the subject by a very good Cameroonian friend of mine, Naz Bama, an accomplished marketing and banking professional based in Sweden. In the piece, Bama endorsed Chiroma after brilliantly analyzing the doubts that some Cameroonians have about him, including whether he's indeed an agent of change. As Bama noted in the article, one of the scenes haunting Chiroma's campaign comes from when, while serving as communication minister, he said there was no Anglophone marginalization problem. But to his credit, speaking in Bamenda recently, Chiroma apologized for that, saying he was simply reading a government script. That should definitely count for something in Africa, where most politicians hardly ever apologize for anything, past or present. I strongly recommend the entire article, so I will post a link to it. Finally, my fellow Nigerians and Cameroonian friends, kindly share this video to other Cameroonians you know and urge them to go to the polls this Sunday and vote for Chiroma. May God bless Issa Chiroma, may God bless Cameroon, and may God bless the Nigeria-Cameroon relationship.